Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, today is one of my favorite kind of episodes where I get to reconnect with a friend that I haven't talked to in a few years, and we have so much fun. And so today I'm talking with Deborah Johnson. And hold on, you're going to find out who she is because you're going to want to know who she is. But we're going to talk about all kinds of things that you hear me talk about a lot too, because Deborah and I are on the same page in so many different ways. But maybe we'll talk about heroes. Maybe we'll talk about summits, hiking. Who knows where we're going to go, right? And just like every episode, make sure you listen until the end because the fact that you're listening to this means there is something in today's episode that you need to hear. And it's probably something that you need to share with other people too. So when you finish listening to this episode, make sure to share with the people that you love. So with that, let's roll the episode. Hey, Deborah. I always rub my hands together. I don't know why. I'm like so excited, like a little kid, like, oh, I get to talk to Deborah again.
Oh, Jason, you're just such a fun person. And, we had that great year of serving together on our chapter, our NSA chapter, Los Angeles chapter, when I was president, and you came forward and doing the sound. And what an amazing person. You were always there and just willing to do that. And I still have, actually, I have to bring this up because I have no idea where it's at now, but I know it's on my phone somewhere. I still have that video of you doing a song during the Christmas party.
Oh, do
So,
you?
yes,
Pulled out my guitar and I was playing. I know
you were.
it's like I was a little intimidated, right? Because here, I mean, we haven't really introduced you properly, but I mean, Deborah is she is a real musician. Okay. I mean, this woman is amazing, and you're going to find out
Uh,
about that. But yeah, I was a little intimidated, with you and a lot of the other people that were in the
uh,
room. Because I was kind of the hack, but you know what? I enjoy it. I have fun, and I think everybody else had fun. I hope too.
they
So
really had a good time. Everyone had a good time, and that's the whole thing of. And I had that Christmas party in our home, which was fun. So you're
yeah,
right. You were right by my Blutner grand piano, so it
I
was
know.
very appropriate.
Yeah, I don't even I pale in comparison to the grand, right? No, it's great. So, and maybe just kind of let people know a little bit about you because I know too. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, but
Right.
but there's a couple of things that you threw out there, like NSA, which stands for
Yes.
National Speakers Association, right?
Right. Right.
Because I have a bad joke that I like to tell people sometimes. It's like, well, what Jason travels all over the world. What does he do? Is he really like some spy or something? I'm like, well, CIA and NSA, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I can say that, right? But
You can.
they're not the government organizations.
Right.
But
Right.
just give people a little thumbnail of who you are, because like I said, I think you're an amazing person. You're one of my
Oh.
favorite people. So
Well, number one, I'm a woman and a mom and a mom of three sons, but I grew up with music and chose that as my profession. Became a professional musician and composer, and so that's where I've put out a lot of material for Grammys, and I've worked internationally, and I've worked as a professional musician for probably 25, 30. Oh, I don't know. I quit counting how many years. When I say how many years, people try to
no,
figure
because
out,
you're
okay,
only
how old are you?
29.
Oh, I know, I know. No, and I don't say the age of my kids anymore. So, yeah, but I've worked in this field. I've done different things throughout it because I wanted to be around more when raising our kids, three sons. So, and they are launched, by the way, which is wonderful. And I didn't really transition. I expanded my career to be include speaking, and I've absolutely loved it. It's another creative field for me. It's creative because it's not just standing on a stage and giving a message. It is also creating online content. It's also creating um, live streams. It's being able to do video production. It's being able to do all of those things that I did as a composer as well. All of that and combined. And so I think that's one of the most important principles of if you are recreating your life at mid-career halftime, you need to look at all of the things that you've done, and people discount those careers and some of their skills. And I was ready to sit on some of mine because I felt like people kept focusing on the music and they weren't focusing on the message. I just needed to figure out how. And that's where I've really done the crafting of the keynote speech, because figuring out how to use the music and how to use my experience really to help others more. So that's kind of the journey. I feel like I'm never going to quit. I don't want to quit. I love what I do. I'm still writing. I just finished my 5th book, and I'm putting together a historical online course to go with one of my musicals, because I've written musicals. Bad habit, by the way. But it's
But they're fun.
Oh, they're fun, but they're money pits, and there's so much time. But yeah, but they really are. I mean, when I look at the experience, it's amazing. So, but the all of this kind of combined is where I've been. So it's just, and still going, because I just really believe that I think as long as we can keep having a message that some people are it's relevant for others, and we can keep giving. And this is the way I love to give, of just being able to give more. I give a lot of free stuff as well. Of course, I'm in business, but it's a joy for me when people are progressing and learning and growing through their lives.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you have taken, and it's one of the reasons why I want to talk to you today too, right? Is because, like you said, you kind of had a career as a professional musician. Like you said, you've done a lot of things. And again, she's being very humble, folks. You've seen people like that can just sit down at the piano and play anything. That's Deborah. It's like, well, I think it kind of goes like this, right? And then she just starts playing, right? I mean, amazing.
Oh.
But what's interesting is, like you said, I mean, you've done that for a while, but then you kind of expanded, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk to you because, like you said, so many of us find ourselves in the middle of our life.
Right.
And honestly, most people freak the fuck out at that point, right?
There's
And
so much
they're
fear.
like, what do I do? Midlife crisis, get a divorce, buy a Ferrari if you're a guy, whatever it happens to be. And often people's lives just go down the toilet at that point, right? Where instead it's kind of like, well, no, hold it, right? I don't necessarily have to throw out everything,
right?
But how can I use what I've already learned? So maybe help people kind of understand, how did you go through that process, and how do you help people go through that process? Because, like I said, I think a lot of times we don't realize how grateful we should be for what we've gone through, even the really crappy things, right?
Yes. Yeah, you really have to really take an honest look, be compassionate with yourself, first of all. But everybody has different roundabouts in their life, and these roundabouts can happen, with the Great Recession. Like, that's when I started kind of doing a lot of the expansion, 2008 and 9, when the music field, when I was doing corporate events, I was doing some headline entertaining. It was wonderful, large events, arenas, and huge stages. And I found at that point, corporations and events were starting to hire mainly name acts, which I am not a name act, by the way, Deborah Johnson. I think there's 800 million of us in the world. And I mean, I do great music, but I'm not going to fill seats. And then, or hit songs, or the tribute acts that are doing those name acts and hit songs. And I didn't really want to do a tribute act. So those are even though I'd done music from those acts, it's different to do a tribute act. So in that, I found what they were hiring were speakers, and it was still on the stage. It was still having that sort of effectiveness. And what I wanted to do was to be able to continue having influence. And people can have different influence in different ways. And I felt like I could have a more influence and more impact when I'm in a field that has multiple venues for performance. And I'm not an extrovert, I'm an introvert. That's why I've written 5 books. That's why I've written hundreds of songs, because I sit there and rewrite, because that's what it takes. But the process of being able to touch people, of being able to give to people, and I've had to work on that craft, to be honest, because the speaking craft was a lot harder than the music craft. When you mentioned sit down and play anything, I just did a number of gigs for Disney because I'm still on. I've been an independent contractor with them. I don't know how many, maybe 25 years. I don't know. I've done a lot of extra events for them, from weddings to private events, and all of that. And so I was subbing in, and I was the top sub at one of the locations where one of the guys had shoulder surgery. So I played multiple. This was at the Grand Hotel, which is a beautiful place, by the way, if you've never been there in California. It's an amazing place. You walk in, it's just amazing. And I'm on, a $90,000 piano, and I'm just playing. It's just wonderful. But but they had this big Star Wars exhibit. And so we needed to play Star Wars every set. And it was long gigs. This was, I've never wanted to work for them full time. That's why I've always been on the sub list. So it's a long day. So I had 8 different sets, and I played Star Wars every set. So I learned it in different keys. But it was a lot on ear. So I just picked it up and did it. And then, the Cantina song, and then the Darth Vader theme. You want to put in these little different things and then add the melodies or medleys. But it makes it interesting. And I think for our businesses and for our lives, it's a great principle. Again, a lot in the music field is transferable for so many businesses and many people. And it doesn't matter whether you're giving your time to a worthy organization, and you're donating, and you're wanting to start a nonprofit. But there are transferable concepts of being able to make it interesting. Make it interesting for yourself. Make it interesting for others. Play it in a different key. Play it in a little different rhythm. Being able to all of a sudden, when you hear somebody has a birthday, well, hey, we need to sing for you. Those sort of things. Now, that doesn't always happen in keynote speeches, but there are a lot of things, even on the fly with some of those, that you need to be able to adjust to. So I knew those sort of principles were very transferable. It took me a while to realize that, though, and to accept that even in myself. And that's what I encourage others now, because I've gone through some of this same process. That was a long answer, Jason.
Well, that's what I like. I like the long answers, right? No, I wanted to go back because I like to. A lot of times obviously there's always brilliance that comes out of your mouth.
Oh, yeah,
but
tell that to my family. Tell that to my boys, please.
Well, Greg already knows, right? Maybe it's your kids that don't, right?
Well, he knows not to deny it, so that's why we've lasted this long.
No, I think it's because I know a lot of people who listen to me are introverts. Right.
Yes.
So I wanted to retouch on that. So you
Right.
just heard Deborah say she's an introvert. I'm an introvert.
Yes.
Right. And yet we can get up on the stage with
yeah.
thousands or tens of thousands of
Right.
people. Right. And can do it. Now, was it easy? No. Does it take work? Yes. Can you learn how to do it?
Yes.
Absolutely. Right. And
Right.
in fact, I mean, again, more performers than I do, but
Yeah.
a lot of, comedians, actors, musicians,
Right.
they're huge introverts.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
but,
they are.
But we've
Yes.
learned how to kind of flip the switch.
Right.
And be who we need to be at that particular time to be able to make stuff happen. But I love what you also said, because I'm a big Star Wars fan myself. Right. So
You were not alone. There was a huge conference, and I saw just about every outfit there was.
oh yeah. Yeah. But I thought what was really interesting is what you said is, there's I'm trying to help people to realize that it's okay to be themselves.
Yes.
And to be a
Yes.
little different, right? And
Right.
so I love what you just said there, because John Williams, I think, wrote most of the Star Wars music. There might have been some other stuff, but all the,
Right.
Darth Vader
The main-
theme, all
yeah.
the main stuff was all
Dun,
him,
dun,
right?
dun, 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 dun. Yes.
Dun,
Yes.
dun, dun, dun,
Yeah,
dun.
I could do that in a couple of
I know.
TV. Yeah.
I can just see you over there. Right. But so when John wrote that, obviously it was thematic. It was for the movie. It was instrumental. There was the reason why he wrote
Right.
what he wrote the way that he did. But what's interesting is, for music maybe that's written by other people,
Right.
but even for things that we have done ourselves, there's different ways to play the same thing,
Right.
right? I mean, I
Right.
love kind of, taking my guitar over there, and I don't have the same voice as some of the other people, so sometimes I'll tune the guitar a little bit different, right? Slide the capo up to different places so it's in a different key so I can sing it better. I might sing it faster or sing it slower than the original, right? It's even fun sometimes to play something to where it almost doesn't even sound like the original thing,
Right.
but
Right.
it's still the same, note chord progressions, maybe in a different key, sped up or
Right.
slowed down, right? Like you said, that we can play these things in different keys with different
Right.
rhythms, with other stuff like that. So there's kind of this flexibility, within our life, and even kind of, the example of you playing there for Disney, but also I'm sure there's been examples in your life too where you might have done something or created something with one intent, but that can be repurposed and reused in a different way that's
Right.
completely different, right?
Right. Oh, there's all sorts of I'm on the fly. I'm trying to think of some of those things, but it's definitely true that you can use some of those life principles in different ways. Finding someone's uniqueness. I've taught privately since I was the age of 13 because I didn't want to babysit the 5 kids next door and I did not want to pull weeds. So I thought I could teach enough piano. I started it, and I think I can teach the neighbor kids piano. So I started them out, and then I started teaching their parents. So I was teaching adults, very young. But throughout that whole stage, I had a lot of, that's been one of the things I've done as a musician as well as touring, as writing, is to teach not only privately, but then I started teaching in the university and colleges. But but you find that there are people that love music and they want to be in it, but there are certain ones, and you're thinking, "Oh, you poor dear," you're.
You're tone deaf, but
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh my. And especially, I had this one student my kids still tease about, but it's you can find something, some uniqueness that's a characteristic about them, and so you have that uniqueness. And I encourage people, you got to sit back and reflect enough. We don't sit back and think, we just do and think about, how am I unique? Yeah, well, I'm kind of quirky, or I'm kind of, what do I do, that's a little different than anybody else. And in fact, I'm starting to do some live streams because I had somebody else point this out to me. And, I hire in some coaches now and then. And she said to me, what is going on now? She said, you need to start doing these behind the scenes because it's amazing. People are always asking, what are you working on now? And so I just do that. She said, do that a couple times a week. So I started in that. And it's amazing how many people listen to these things. I can't believe people have that sort of time, first of all. But that they listen and they go, oh, that's what you're working. Oh, you're working on a historical course? Oh, well, how are you putting that? So I'll share a few things, or, what I'm doing. But some of these things that we think that are so, well, normal for us, but they could be totally unique to somebody else. And they're thinking, how do I do that? How do I craft that in my life, or how do I capture that in my life? So I don't know if this totally answered your questions, but finding the uniqueness and using how we can draw that out of people. And sometimes the way we draw it out of people is kind of sitting on them and making them think, and
well,
just,
like your coach did for you, right?
yes, and thinking, oh, yeah, they ask me that all the time. What are you working on now? What are you working on? What are you working? Well, okay, so I'll just tell them, what I'm doing. It's not done yet. Usually I try to tell people what I've just done, not what I'm doing. So I'm in the messy process of, yeah.
Yeah, but actually, as you're saying that, it reminds me because I love music myself, and so I watch a lot of documentaries and read a lot of books, and it always fascinates me, right, to understand some of the artistic process that people went through, or how did you get the name for that song,
Yeah.
or what made you think of doing that, right? And sometimes it's like it's off the wall. Like I
Yeah.
remember a mother and child reunion from Paul Simon.
Right,
He
right.
was in some Chinese restaurant somewhere, and one of their menu items was mother and child reunion, and it was a
Wow.
chicken and egg dish. And he's like, "That's a great title for a song, right?" And I'm like, "Man, right?" I mean, there,
Yeah.
but what's interesting, and I think it brings it up, and this is true for everybody listening
Mm-hmm.
too. A lot of the things that we think are mundane or that are just ordinary about us, there's nothing
Right.
special about us other people find fascinating, right? So
Yeah.
I don't find it
Yeah.
a surprise at all that people are like, Deborah, why don't you tell us what you're doing? Show us how you're doing that, right? I can even see you on the piano, like, yeah, I can't quite get this part right. You
Yeah.
know, what do you think, right? You know, or like the historical novel.
Of
You
course.
know, I
Yeah, the
didn't I
course.
didn't know
Yeah.
that that was something that you were working on, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think you know again, but a lot of times, I guess, were you a little scared when your coach said that to actually share some of that stuff, or
I think I had gotten past the live stream. I think for those of us who were coming up with video at a certain time, we were so used to being perfect on video. And you had to have a perfect presentation and you had to have everything together. And when you do live stream, I'm pretty honest. Usually I'll start a live stream and my gardener will show up. you know,
yeah,
and he has the loudest blower I'm sure, of anywhere around because it's very, very loud. And he always stays right outside my door. Or, there'll be something happened, during that process. Or I've done live streams before and I check it afterwards and I think, oh darn, I didn't have the sound on. So I have to redo it. I go through the same things. I go through the same things when people tell me, oh, I'm just not good in tech. I'm thinking, I call myself a little bit of a techie, but only because I've made so many mistakes and I've had to build into my music studio because I've done a lot of pre-production work on my projects and continue to do little things. And and the only reason that I'm even better at tech is because I just keep making mistakes and you keep going through you got to figure it out. I mean, there's no other way, but you got to figure it out. And so I think putting those live streams together, I had done enough of them to think, okay, I could do this. But I still think each time, Jason, I have to be honest, okay, am I wearing the same top as I am last time? I need to wear something a little different. There's that vain part of me. But that makes it interesting. And then I kind of I've started combining it a little bit with advertise, just saying something about the podcast that my podcast that came out this week. I speak twice a month on my podcast and I only have one guest a month, so it's a little different format. I bring in my husband once a month, which is risky sometimes, but he's great. We have a great time. But he's wonderful. So we have a lot of fun. But I was speaking this week on don't forget the end of the story. Don't are you spoiling it? And then I focus on the end of your story. And so in the live stream today, I said, we just recently saw Top Gun, and I loved it. And one of the biggest benefits of this, it was really well written. First of all, I felt like really well written over there. But they really gave a really good insight on the backstory. And I said, some people are discounting their backstory because you're embarrassed or you're shameful or you think, oh, it's not worth much. But it was important. That backstory was important for now the sequel with Maverick. And we understood this character that had never been promoted because of all the dumb stuff he'd done, but actually brave stuff that he'd done too. And it helped propel the story of the movie along. And it's one of the reasons, the backstory is why I'm doing this short historical course, online course for my musical Tsarina, because Tsarina is based on that Russian Revolution. But I felt like there's a lot of, fiction in it as well.
mm-hmm.
But the important part is that there's an important backstory to this to really understand the characters and kind of the tension of the time. If you're going to add that on a stage, which happens during the music, if you're going to add that reality, you need to know what's happening at the time. So that's why I felt like it was important to give even a little bit more of the backstory, because there are a lot of people, I'm not going to get too political here, but they're trying to erase our history. You can't really erase the history. You can learn from it, but you can't just erase it. I mean, it's there, so it's documented. So we want to learn from it, and that's really, really important. I've been big in, the education part of this as well, and that's so important, and it's important as a writer as well.
Well, I think it's interesting, that backstory concept, because again, I'm glad you brought that up, because it kind of ties in a little bit with what we were talking before about, is that
Right,
and you just explained in the the movie Top Gun to Maverick,
right,
right? that
right.
that for us to be able to really understand the characters, we need a little bit
Yes,
of the backstory, or we don't
yes,
understand it,
yes,
right?
exactly, exactly.
And but how much is that true in our lives as well?
Right.
Unless other people learn some of our backstories,
Yes,
they're never going to be able to fully see us as
right,
people,
right,
right? But how often, like you said, we're maybe thinking, well, my backstory isn't really that big of a deal, or
right,
maybe I'm embarrassed about some of my backstory,
right,
right?
right.
But the more that I've helped people kind of come forward, and the more I've been in groups where
Yes,
we're allowed to be more vulnerable and share more of those things, it
right,
just amazes me how many of us have
right.
so much of the same backstory.
Yeah,
And most of the
yeah.
time, it's the things that we're embarrassed about sharing. But why be embarrassed? Everybody else has done it too.
I know, I know, I know. It's really kind of interesting that way. And I remember I was just starting to work with this one colleague in the music field, and he looked at me and he said, "You just feel like I feel like you've had this perfect life." And I said, "No, I haven't." It's because basically my parents stayed together, and we were able to have music lessons. But when I found more out about his life and about his dad had hidden this big framed, which is very common actually. But his dad had hidden this whole framed awards and all of these accolades because he had served on D-Day, and he was at Normandy, but he had never shared that story. He had never, and he didn't find out until the frame was found, and then was going to tell that. But those stories, I think people need to hear some of those stories. We need to hear from some of those people and they're quickly dying off of those, at least that generation. But the people that have gone through some of these, because it encourages us in our own personal journey. And in the Summit, the book I wrote, which is an allegory, this is the latest. It's an allegory because it's a story, and I felt like people would relate to that story and put themselves in that character, almost more than just. There's so many of these principle books. I mean, you can read a book after book, and my Women at Halftime book is a great book, but it has principles to apply at the end of every section. It's great. You can apply those. But do people do them? No, they hardly do them. So that's why you take courses and all of that. But the Summit, the book was, if you can involve yourself, it's very simple, but people need to hear your story.
Well, and I think it's great. I had somebody else recently on that their latest book was more of an allegory type of a thing too, which again,
Yeah.
from being a professional instructor, right, and
Right.
understanding learning and other stuff that I've been doing for decades too.
Right.
Like you said, there's so much of that how to checklist kind of
Right.
nonfiction textbooky kind of stuff that's out there.
Yes. Yes.
But most of us don't ever, that's knowledge, but we never really, learn the skills or incorporate it through doing it or through
Right.
reflection. And I think
Right.
that's why things like allegories are so great, because it allows us to kind of relate to those concepts in a different way, and it helps
Right.
us actually learn it at a much deeper level. So tell me a little bit more about this, because again, I think it's the summit, but the subtitle is something like
Journey to
Hero
Hero Mountain.
to
Yeah,
Hero
yeah, to
Mountain,
Hero
right?
Mountain. Yeah, it's here's the book. I just happen to have one right here.
Really?
Yes, how about
You
that?
should.
I should. I know I should. I am just. I always. There's a certain amount of self promotion. I've been around so many of those people, especially in the arts, but so I'm pretty careful about that. But I really believe in this book. It's simple, but it starts with the character, and I emphasize again, writing is rewriting, and this is most like writing the summit was most like writing the book of a musical for me because it was not easy. I don't call myself a natural book writer or a storyteller. But writing is rewriting. And so this was, the character development. There's different characters in there, but the protagonist, the main character, her name is Mallory. And Mallory means ill fated. Uh, and she, there's little songs they sing about her, that they do. But she goes through all of these different lands, and the end thing, she has a guide, and she also has her guide gives her this little band of hope. And I made sure I had one this time. I don't always have one in front of me when I do these podcasts, but the little band of hope is, she can never lose that, because if she loses hope, she'll never get to her summit. And these are the life principles that are in it, and that she has to go through the different caves, and she finds these jewels, but she has to spend them all. They're not given to her to begin with, so she has to spend them all to be able to get there. And her name needs to change, and she wonders, why does my name need to change? But at the very end, when she's actually climbing that summit, her name has changed to Andouillette, which means strong and courageous. But she had to go through all of these lands and all of these areas to be able to get all the way to her summit. So this was it's a great life principle for us that there's many of these, and it's hard. It's hard. Now she has, I won't spoil the whole story, but she has her dog with her, Crockett. I started calling every dog around me Crockett because when I was writing it, my son got a new dog, and instead of Tucker, it was Crockett because I kept calling her Crockett. But she's able to bring Crockett with her. But the guide told her, you don't really even need your dog, but I'm going to let you bring your dog. So he ends up being a nice little companion. But she has to go through all of these hard times, to self-doubt, a lot of that through there, and danger, to be able to actually get to the place. She even needed to start climbing. Here's a gal with her character is not excited about heights. I mean, she doesn't like heights. She has to climb the summit now on ropes, but that was the last step. That was going through everything else. And so when we think about our life and getting to where we want to be, we have to realize, even if we are at mid-career, even if we are at halftime of life, there are roundabouts still, and the roundabouts start showing up in this book. That's where I started developing that more, because immediately when I started speaking about roundabouts, people got it, because I'm in a roundabout. They're understanding. They can't get out. They don't know where the signs are. How do they exit their roundabout? So that's where I started developing that more, because they're not even to the place where they're even climbing their summit yet. They're in these roundabouts and they're stuck. And sometimes they go back because they didn't do the right exit, that sort of thing. So that's where I started developing all of that with that messaging. And again, as we're talking right now, Jason, I'm trying to remember your question. So
It's okay. That's how I roll, right?
I guess I'm a politician.
No. Because I mean, again, what you just dropped there, right? If we had a mic, it'd be like a boom, mic drop, right?
Yeah.
Is so much of, because again, like I've helped a lot of people at midlife too.
Right.
I going through it, as
Right.
well, right? I got my
Yeah.
own demons that I'm dealing with
Right.
myself, but it is, that whole idea of roundabouts. And I think especially the last few years,
Yes.
a lot of people feel like they're just going around and around and around and around, and they can't figure out why things aren't changing because they're
I
just
agree.
going around in circles literally in their life, right?
I
It's kind of like
agree. I
Groundhog's
agree.
Day. You just kind
Yes.
of get up and you do
Yeah.
the same thing. And so much of the time, at that point in your career, let's
Right.
say you're kind of doing the same things, right?
Right.
You're going through the same routines. You get up in the
Right.
morning, you get the kids ready for school, you rush out, oh shit, I forgot to have breakfast. You got to, grab coffee on the way, you go to work, you come home, you go to
Right.
soccer practice, right?
Right.
It's like almost every day kind of becomes the same thing. And you're just living it over and over and over again.
Right.
And, a lot of us, we didn't start off our life that way, right?
Right.
We're like, I'm going to go up on the top of this mountain, this
Yeah.
summit. I got to get up there.
Yeah.
But then life tends to get in the way,
Right.
right? And a lot of times, sometimes we need some help
Right.
getting out of that. But,
Right.
too, even from some of the other stuff that you were saying about how, we get certain things along the way, but sometimes we have to give those things up to get to the next place,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I think
Right.
that's something that a lot of times people don't really think about, is we feel like we can just accumulate, 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 accumulate. But
Yeah.
if your glass is already full, you got to let some out before you can take any more. And sometimes that
Right.
means leaving relationships, leaving things behind, paying money, other things like that, that obviously this book that you have put
Right.
together kind of shows in that character, right? So we can read your book, and we should see ourselves in
In
that,
something. In some
some
character.
character in that book.
Yes, there's some character that you'll see, whether it's good or bad. But yeah, when you talked about giving up, sometimes we put so much value on something in our life too. We think we can't give it up. And it might not have been real to begin with.
Mhm.
And the illustration was that I give in the book a little bit is, for her finding these different jewels. Well, she thinks they're real, but how sometimes things look, this sort of path to success looks amazing, but is it really what we want? Is it real? What is going to give us the most satisfaction? And I have crafted now at this point in my life something a little bit different. I don't need to be speaking every week. I want to be able to travel with my husband. I want to be able to work remotely. I want to help others who do the same. And I want to speak to the events that I can have the most effectiveness with, mostly inspire them to move on, and provide online training. And I've opened up my Learn Music Again for those that want to learn again, and that's another little avenue. But it's only because I have hundreds of pieces of sheet music and resources, and I've taught for so many years, and so there's so many areas there that I can encourage people just in their life. And so we have those choices, what may look so real and like success, when people think, oh, I'll be successful when I get here. And you get there and then you go, it doesn't feel like I'm successful. And I've had to face this definitely in the music field, because being successful is working in that field where the 1% of the 1% work. And it's in the professional field. And what I speak to people about too is that you don't just have to do one thing. And especially if you're an artist, you need to diversify, have multiple forms of income. So, you music licensing, you've got the sheet music, you've got instruction, you've got all of these different areas that you're doing. So you're not just stuck with like a gig, like what happened during the shutdowns with the speakers and with entertainers. They didn't have work for 2 years, everything canceled, everything. So unless they had something else going. And then people found out like, oh, wow, I don't have to do as many gigs. I can develop this area, or I really like this. Or, boy, they shut down the offices, but now I'm working remotely. Oh, I don't want to go back to the office. That's a big one right now. Huge one, by the way, where people want to work remotely. How can you do that effectively? Well, that's always been the case with me, but you have to you have to find out a way to do it, and you have to be okay with doing live streams when your gardener shows up. You're just do it at a different time. I try to time it now, like a little before, or whatever. So, but it's kind of a joke now of when that's going to happen.
Well, I'm sure people don't mind.
No, yeah, actually,
Really,
I think it
right?
adds something to
Yeah.
it. And there's been a time too, I remember doing one, and I don't know what it was. It was this flock of birds that were so noisy. They were so noisy. And I just stopped and I said, wow. I mean, what is that? What is that noise? And I said, well, I'll find out afterwards and tell you next time. But it was, this huge, because you don't know with some of those things. And when you make the decision, if you're doing actual recording, you can start again. But if you're doing something just live off the cuff, then you just have to accept things that are going to happen and acknowledge them. And it's like when I've gone on stage and I've had, right before I walk on, there's a lady that walks off and she's choking from a bite of food. And so I'm panicked. Like, is she going to be okay? And I had to leave her. And you got to put it out somebody else came to her aid. But there was that panic, like, oh, can I even go on? And so you have to be able to, just kind of keep going and have rehearsed that enough that you can keep going and not totally get thrown off.
Well, I think it's interesting because it's, again, because I love music. So again, I'm going through all these things in my head about it, right?
Right.
It's most of the music that we listen to is studio music.
Right, right.
So you can create things in the studio that you can
Right.
never create live.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. Oh, yes. Oh, the pitch correction is pretty amazing. Yes.
The pitch correction. I mean, even some of the different little sound effects and other
Right.
things that you can kind of add to it, and the
Right.
overdubbing and the other stuff that you can do. You can create a sound that is amazing, but
Right.
you can't replicate it in real life,
Right, right.
right? And that's why some people are disappointed when they go to a live venue and they're like, oh, they sound a little flat or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, but that's what life is, right?
Yes.
But how much of the time, I think, do people look around and we see all the pretty Instagram posts or the
Oh,
other,
yeah.
pre-recorded, edited, overdubbed stuff of other people's lives, and we think, well, I'm no good because look at what they're doing, right? But to realize that what they're doing is not real, just like those gems in the book probably
Right.
are not real. That's a fabrication. It doesn't exist, right? Nobody looks as good in the magazines as they do in real life because they've got airbrushed and all this other
Yes,
stuff, right?
yes.
I mean, it's so, but that's okay because life is just life. And that's what I love about, live music, live streams, other stuff
Right,
like that too. That's why even though this is pre-recorded, it's all live. I don't edit it, right?
right.
It's
Yeah,
like
I
if
do very
something
little of
happens,
that
something
too.
happens,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah,
Because that is what life is about.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, yeah.
Definitely. It brought up the point of when you talked about the Instagram posts. There's one of the areas that Mallory goes through is the idea factory where nobody is there because they've all left for the social media circus. So the social media circus is the
Hey,
social media.
that's one of the nonfiction parts of the book, right? The
Yes,
social
it's
media
well. There's a
factory.
lot of nonfiction in this one. Yeah, but actually, it's very based on all of the true parts of life because you have this one of the tents that Tama is in. Tama always had the perfect Instagram posts, and you see these pictures everywhere that are just perfect, and Mallory just wants that for her social media. She's got to have it. And then she sees this character outside the tent and she doesn't even recognize her. So there's a difference, such a disconnect in there. And with the Bluebird, which is the Twitter, where they're selling tweets that will really get a lot of attention. So they've got those, going, and then she's got Connector, where that's LinkedIn, and so there's all of these little areas of this social media circus that really are, they emulate what life is, the nonfiction of life, of with a fictional slant on it. And so you can just identify with some of these. And we've all been there. We've all compared ourselves. We've all said, well, my stuff, I don't have as many followers there. I don't have even as many likes. I don't have all of that. But you have to do this. First of all, you have to love what you do. I mean, that's really, really important. Or at least like what you do. I mean, if you really hate what you do, you need to do some self-evaluation. You can love what you do even more when you become more proficient at it. And the reason I say that is because of that book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, by Cal Newport. Great book. But as you grow in your proficiency in an area, and he talks about perfect practice and all those 10,000 hours, which I believe it needs more, by the way. But there are those hours that are spent in perfect practice and all of that. But you're going to grow in that field, and a lot of times if you grow in a specific area, you're going to develop more of a love for it. If you don't, then you need to just really, really evaluate, and people get burned out of it. But if there are areas in it that just really excite you, spend the time studying that and digging a little bit deeper. And especially at mid-career, half-time of life, that might be something, there's a little avenue to go down. But that takes some reflection, it takes some journaling, it takes some time to just really evaluate, and we don't stop to do that nearly often enough.
Well, yeah, and I know, just to kind of wrap up a little bit, because eventually we have to stop, because people got to get back to their lives. But you've got this great banner behind you too,
right?
The hero inside, that I know you've been talking more about too, and it's interesting, because we talked about Star Wars for a while,
right,
and Top Gun and movies and things like that, right? That are usually based on some sort of a hero's journey, and we love watching other people. We love rooting for the heroes, especially the underdogs, right? We watched an underdog movie last night that was a sports movie, and it's like you're always you're rooting for the underdog,
right?
And but what's interesting, and I love that topic and that idea, is I think so many people, we watch movies, we read books, we think that the characters in those books and movies are the heroes. And when one finally realizes that you are the hero,
right,
and we're going through the same thing, that's when life can really change for you. Right. So maybe share a little bit about that, because like I said, that's just been my observation in the last few months, especially with some of the stuff that I've been doing. But I want to hear from you too, about the hero inside of all of us.
And that's usually when you go back and you realize who you are as a person, how amazing you are as a person. You have to validate that in so many areas, and it's not just a career. It's not just where you live. It's not just some of those successes, but really who you are. When you look at our bodies and all that goes on, every day in our bodies, and about our self-care and all of that is pretty amazing when you look at that. But the hero inside, we all have that sort of spark, because the hero inside of you is there. You've got that uniqueness of your skills, of your experience, and even there's a twinge of that even before you even started into whatever career you chose or to whatever path you chose. There's something there. There's some sort of spark in you. And you have to realize that sort of spark will end up carrying all the way through your life. It could be a determination. It could be that persistence. It could be that optimism, looking at life in a different way. And the hero inside is that self-talk that you are worth it, that you are not going to be just forgotten. I mean, at some point, I know nobody will care about who I was. I mean, I'm not going to be one of these, that people visit my gravesite someday. I mean, that's except for maybe my kids now, maybe now and then, I don't know, but it would be, I know after losing my parents, all the stuff and everything that they've gathered, that stuff is thrown away. That's not what lasts. Is what we have, and that hero that we have inside, and then to be able to give something to others. And it doesn't matter any sort of business that you're in, even if you're selling shoes, you're selling some sort of service. If you're creating code, you are still helping somebody figure out a form, something. In every sort of field, you can earmark something that this is why you can do this specifically, and so it's that belief that you were put here for some sort of a purpose. And I think we do a disservice for our youth. In fact, I've had some youth now read The Summit, even though my audience is more mid-career, half-time. It's a great book for graduation presents, wonderful, because that belief in that you can do it, that's that hero inside of you, and that's the hero's journey. And what we do is we beat up ourselves first. And I give an illustration in my keynote about the baseball movie with Kevin Costner. I think it's For the Love of the Game, and it's about a pitcher on the mound. And my husband played pro ball, as you know, but he played pro ball. He played for 3 years, played up to AAA. He was a pitcher, relief pitcher for the Indians, what used to be called the Indians. And there's this scene in that movie where the pitcher's on that pitcher's mound, and the crowd is going wild, and the stands are just full. They're just absolutely going crazy. But everything goes absolutely quiet in that pitcher's mind, because he's focused, and he's focused on that other intense player standing in that batter's box, just daring him to get him out. But that's what we need to do, is just push out those external voices. And some of those external voices can be our voices saying, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, yeah, you really, who are you fooling? Oh, aren't you too old? Oh, your time has passed you by. All of those voices, or the naysayers, and pushing those aside and really realizing you are worth it. And if I could leave your audience with that is, you are worth it because you have that value. I mean, I'm a woman of faith, strong believer that you were created with value. You are here as a unique person. Look around you. We know this. There's nobody that's going to look exactly like us. There might be people that are very close, but you are unique, uniquely made and created. And after we just spoke before going to South Africa, everybody, and I tell this to, they say, oh, what did you like the most? Well, to me, it was the uniqueness of the animals and the variety of the animals, the incredible variety of that. And the same is true of people, and you are worth it. So I hope that gives an encouragement, because again, if you lose hope, you've lost everything. You cannot get to your summit.
Yeah, so keep that hope band on.
Yes.
And even if some other guide hasn't given it to you, then
Yeah.
Deborah just gave it to you today, and from a virtual standpoint. But I love that, and thank you, Deborah, for sharing it, and the whole imagery too of that there is this little spark within all of us. Right. And we get to choose. We're the hero. We get to decide, or are we going to extinguish that spark, or are we going to hide it from other people?
Right.
Or are we going to use some of the self-care and some of the things and stoke it up a little bit?
Right.
Right. And burn a little brighter.
Yes.
right? I mean, there's the passage in the Bible, let your light so shine,
That's
right?
right.
Are we going to be the light that shines to people in the world? Are we going to be little suns
Right.
that are radiating light and love out to people around us? Because,
Right.
like you said, we're all unique. We're all here for a purpose, and
Exactly.
there's only certain people that we can help.
Yes. Well, they have to be willing.
They
Yeah.
have to be willing, but
Right. Right.
again, it's like, I mean, you and I, we could both effectively give the same exact speech,
Right.
but certain people in the audience would resonate and be like, that was the best speech
Of
ever.
course.
And other
Yes.
people, I give the same speech and they're like, Jason's a bozo,
Yeah.
right? Oh, and there'd be a few people that might be like, that was awesome, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But
No.
because we are all different,
Right.
right? The world needs all those unique animals.
Exactly. Yeah,
It
exactly.
needs all the unique
Exactly.
humans as well. That's what, to me,
Yes.
at least too, makes life so beautiful, is the
Sure does.
uniqueness and the difference with everybody. So,
Sure does.
oh, my friend, thank you. Like I said, I love connecting, because it's probably been, lose track of time, 3 or 4 years, but it's
Man,
nice
it's
to
been a little
actually
while. Yeah.
get back together with you and appreciate what you're doing. The books that you've got out there. Like I said, the summit just came out. You've got Women at Halftime, a lot of other books as well, and we'll
Right.
leave we'll leave links and everything for that too in the show notes
Right.
as well. But Deborah, thanks for coming on and spending time with me today, and sharing with whoever listens all over the world
Yes.
to this particular episode.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I never take it for granted. Thanks again, Jason.
Thanks.